Welcome to Musicians versus the World, the podcast where we explore aspects of music and musician life that may not have been covered in music school. I am your host, Christine Smith. In today's podcast, we're talking with composer Juan Cortés Arango about his work on MediaPro's The Head. We'll discuss the joy of sound discovery and composing with extended techniques, and we'll also cover the changes in the music industry and how important it is for musicians and composers alike to be flexible and know about both synthesized and traditional music. Juan Cortés Arango is a versatile Columbian composer based in Los Angeles who combines his passion for music with storytelling. He strives to enhance the audio-visual narrative with a unique and unconventional use of music and sound. Juan's most recent work is Funny Birds, a film by Marco Lavia and Hannah Ladul, executive produced by Martin Scorsese. Juan recently finished co-scoring MediaPro's The Head Season 3 with his mentor Federico Husid. And I'm so excited to talk with him. So Juan, thank you so much for being here and welcome to Musicians versus the World.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
I'm excited to talk with you today. I love your work and I've loved learning about you and hearing your story, but I would love to hear it from you. So have you always wanted to be a composer?
No, I discovered that. I think as many people in music, like you, composing is not one of the first disciplines you encounter, like the most immediate is performing. So at the very beginning, I was more inclined to perform. Then I think just life pushed me towards composing. And I found it, and then I really like it. So I ended up doing.
Well, that's what I've loved about your story is that you have just kind of followed the path where your life has taken you. And I believe like in college, it was kind of a bout of tendinitis that made you initially start thinking about things. Is that right?
Yeah, I was very performance oriented, and then I think I was suffering from tendinitis just because like you're studying so much every day. So and normally because you're young, you're not paying attention to like very like key elements such as not just technique but proper positioning or just like posture and things that later on took a heavy toll on me. Like I think when you're young, you think you're invincible, and then you're like, oh, that's not going to happen to me. But very very quickly it happened. So I had to look at options, and when I was going to Berkeley in Boston, and they have they offer a lot of programs. They offer like engineering, producing, so many other paths. Um, and I chose film because it was something that I was interested, but mostly composition because it seemed to be like fairly versatile. But yeah, it was most like life was just taking me there, and I just went along with it. I wasn't thinking too much about it.
So it's a big jump from performing to composition, though. Had you composed before, or were you like, well, let's just go with it and see what happens?
I guess like you're always like exercising composition one way or another. No, when you play in a band, when you play in ensemble, I guess there's always that element of like organizing the crew together, organizing different musical elements. So there is an element of composition in that, or arranging at the very least. So I was familiar with that. And then I remember, I think on different school projects, they would be like, oh, you need to put this arrangement together, and then it was really fun for me to see a page write down and have someone play what I wrote. It was mind blowing that someone could read it and someone could play it. So it became like a game. Like, oh, I put something and sound is gonna come out of it. So that was very cool. So I kept that approach, and so it was like very natural for me to like once I couldn't perform, like my tendonitis was really bad. Like I couldn't really hold a glass for like a week.
Oh, seriously? It was that bad?
I mean, I think I also got very anxious because it was new. You're like you don't know how to deal with like, I don't know. I think it's like dealing with an injury. When you're young, you just don't know what to do because you don't even conceive the idea of getting injured. You're like, no, that cannot happen. I'm too young. I don't know. So when I saw that, it was like, oh, okay, what else can I do? I'm here, I'm away from home. I mean, my options were like, okay, I could leave school, go back, and I guess find a different career path. But it felt very natural to just like, okay, I'll just continue to arrange, and I started adding my own pieces of work, and then it felt very natural. And then I really liked the reading language. That's something that I really really love.
Okay, so what about it? What about it do you love so much?
Well, what I was saying, I like the idea that you can communicate with someone like just by giving them instructions.
Yeah.
And I think at some point is it's very interesting to see you write something and then something comes out, and this exercise of trying to understand really what you're communicating, right? Like trying to really articulate well your thoughts so someone can perform it in the way that you're thinking. It's like a cool, it's almost like an ear training exercise, no?
Yeah.
Because you try different approaches. There's no one universal way. Dynamics are like the Wild West. Someone might see something and think about it a different way. And also, I've been learning through doing it many years now that even things that you would consider common practice in writing are not common practice. Everyone has different ways of understanding them. It kind of says more about you as a composer or as a person than anything else. Like someone that it's very detail oriented, then someone's like people can tell that you're getting anxious. Or on the other hand, it's like if there's for the lack of a better word, like not that many instructions, then you can think of this person as being less careful about their language. It might not be true, but it seems to be consistent with what I've seen at work. No, where like and musicians interpret that vastly differently. So to me, that was very interesting, and it still is, and it's something that I'm still passionate about. Like I really like looking at scores and seeing how people approach different or similar situations in different ways.
Oh, that's so
Um,
interesting. Where do you find yourself on that spectrum? Are you very detail oriented, or are you more like, let's just give them guidelines and see what they do?
I think I'm learning to trust the player, which means learning to let them figure out
Mm-hmm.
a lot more. I'm learning that maybe too much directions is counterintuitive, but at the same time, you see scores from like Stravinsky, who like has very little space for interpretation.
Right.
So I believe in that. I believe in what he has done, or like I look at, I guess it depends on the kind of music that you listen to. That's why I now believe writing is very tied to you as a person.
Hmm.
Because if I look at Stravinsky or Bernstein, that kind of, or, Schoenberg, all of these composers are very heavy on their philosophies of music.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
all have like very, very strong opinions about music theory and philosophy itself, like how music behaves and represents oneself.
Well, I mean,
I
they wrote the books
suppose
on it, so yeah.
and they wrote the books, correct, which says a lot because then you have like Rinsky Korsakov could be in the same line, but then you have the opposite spectrum, which is like say the avant-garde people. So you have Pierre Boulez, you have John Cage,
Yeah.
you have Stockhausen, and you have this also or like the what's the word, like the impressionistic people from the 70s, like Grisset and all of these
Yeah.
guys who were basically making drawings on scores. They look beautiful, they're very graphic, and they're very descriptive, but they also leave a lot more um, space for the player. And then they're like, then you have someone like Penderecki who's like incredibly in the middle, like he's very descriptive, but at the same time, a lot of what he's describing is who's going to count those rhythms, on a side reading session, which is what I experience every time that I go to work. It's like musicians have seen the music, the day before, if I'm lucky. So it's
Mhm.
kind of like understanding that I love the detail, but I also know that I need to trust the player and I need to be coherent with my work, which is I need to give them the tools so they can give me the performance that I need.
Mm.
So sometimes less instructions will actually get me there faster
Oh.
than if I because I can intimidate them, get them anxious. If they see a page full of text, they're gonna be like, okay.
Oh, yeah. So don't go overboard on, don't make them anxious. Does do you
Yeah,
think
I
it
guess.
do you think it matters like as far as like the size of the ensemble? So if you have maybe just one or two players, you can give them a little bit more freedom, but if you have like, 20 or 30, they need more instruction? Or is it, yeah.
I think it depends. Actually, bigger. I mean, they're different. To me, they're different scenarios. Mainly because a bigger ensemble does come with certain challenges, but comes with other liberties. Like for example, they because there's so many, they can hide their mistakes, right?
Hmm.
So if you have an ostinato or something, it's probably going to sound better on the bigger section side reading, just because there's more people playing, so the odds of someone playing it well are higher. You know, as opposed to a soloist who's fully exposed. So at that point, you might actually have to spend a lot more time working on the same passage because that's it. There's nowhere to hide,
Oh.
and then other effects just won't come across, right? Like I feel like especially with extended techniques,
Hmm.
When it comes to a player, I think the best approach that I've found is having a point of reference, but very often we just deviate from that point of reference. So the page becomes just like a formality. It's
Mm.
like, here's the number of bars, really, that I need you to do something.
So
Um,
yeah, no, that makes
but
sense.
yeah,
Now, if we're talking about the head, it sounded like you had some more extended techniques in that. Am I right in that?
yeah, that was the head was very fun because I feel like the a big part of our philosophy was how to achieve sounds that might be perceived as electronic, but just achieve them with like organic sounds, like organic sources.
Right. It was
So,
really cool to hear that. Yeah. So what were some of the things that you did?
oh, well, I'm glad. Well, we recorded a lot of woodwinds, a lot of like low woodwinds, like very big flutes. Like I've never
Mhm.
seen flutes like that. We had this person, Veronica, in Vietnam, who recorded a lot of her instruments, and she just showed up and she said, "I have this, 6 foot tall flute. You want me to blow that?" And it's like, "Sure, we've never seen that. just do that." I don't even.
Dude.
I'm not even gonna try to pronounce the names that she said, but she came up with like a number of instruments. Some of those we knew, and then a lot of they were like the closest instrument that I can think of is like contrabassoons and instruments of that caliber
Yeah.
that we were like at some point we're just interested in how it sounded when she not when she had like a pure tone, but just like the sound that the mechanics of the instrument, like when she blows and it cracks. Like a lot of the things became very interesting. So we kept asking her to just like get closer to the microphone. And at some point it's funny because it's almost like it's not even about what she's playing, but how she's playing it. It's like if she
Oh.
moves, that's cool. And then we cut that. And obviously there's a lot of heavy, processing of the sound so we
Right.
can get it to sound to where we want it. And then strings, like I feel like a lot of strings are fantastic. They're so versatile. You can ask them to do a lot of things.
Well, you're a string player, right? You played cello.
I play cello. I'm very bad at it, but
Oh.
I play cello. And then I play guitar too. So I feel like yeah, sometimes we'll just grab instruments at hand, like percussive instruments, or I'll treat my cello as a percussive instrument. So
Oh, you
it's
treat
not
it like a
great.
percussive instrument? How do you do
Well,
that?
it's you just hit it,
Oh,
and
you
it's
just.
fantastic, and it's good. I mean, it's also not great for the instrument, but it happens.
Yeah.
Um,
So
but
maybe that's
so
not
we
your performing cello. That could be your recording cello, and then you have a different one for.
That's for sure. I don't have a performance cello. I have one cello, and it's beautiful, and I feel guilty every time I hit it, but
Oh.
it's what I need to do. Or the piano. The piano is with Fede. I have never used the piano as in the way that we have before meeting Fede because he's a concert pianist. So my approach to piano at college and for the vast majority of people that I've met was just to make it sound like a piano.
Right.
And then Fede came with this idea of like, or not this idea, he just taught me. He's like, well, this is how prepared piano looks, and this is how I do it. And
You
I
did a
and I love
prepared piano. Wow.
we do a lot of prepared piano and a lot of like I don't know if people I don't know if you would let me do those things to your piano, which I
No.
think is like like at one point I remember we were in Madrid. We would go back and forth from LA and Madrid, and I remember like generally be concerned that one of the strings would like come off and hit us because we were just like we were taking hammers or different tools and just like hitting and looking for resonances on the strings, and we're like,
Yeah.
here it sounds very interesting, just hold the pedal, and just really like exploring like the instrument as a resonant box, not so much as a traditional piano.
Yes.
And it was so a lot of like microscopic attention to sounds that you would do while performing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that became kind of like an interesting palette and an interesting
Yeah, for
exercise.
sure. So when you say a prepared piano, because when I think of a prepared piano, I think of, putting things in between like the strings, like maybe you'll put an eraser or you put a nail or you put a chain on it. And then
Yeah.
when you play the notes, it has a more of a percussive sound. Is that
So
did you do that?
we did that. We took some ideas from again Cage, I guess.
Yeah,
It's just like I'm not a huge fan of him, but I really appreciate what he has
that's fair.
contributed. So yeah, a lot of like we take like even pieces of metal and we just like rub the strings while we're
Yeah,
playing it. So a lot of group effort because it's a lot of
right.
like theatrics.
Yeah.
or trying to like rip off the hair of a bow and just like try to bow it as someone is
Hmm.
playing it, or one hand muting and then just playing it and then
Yeah.
exploring, like trying to get the resonances.
It's
So
like the
a lot of
possibilities are endless.
yeah, so and it became, or sometimes even just knocking the insides and trying not to hit the strings and blow our faces, but just like we would take mallets and hit it. Like it was a lot of like just exploring how the instrument sounds. It was fun because it made me feel like I guess this is what luthiers do, but you just don't think about it. They just hit it and wait if it breaks or not. Um, so we did the same with the cello, with the guitar, and with the piano. Those were like our like basically the main elements that we were using, along with the strings. And the strings, I guess, there's more. Maybe it's because there's just more information about it, so it's easy to get like very interesting textures, or it's just very natural, not easy, very natural to get interesting textures with that string ensemble. You can ask them to go play at at the bridge, behind the bridge,
Mhm.
and somehow there's always like some a different sound that comes out of it.
Yeah.
And
And
then
there's like specific markings to tell musicians to play where on the bridge and things like that. So
exactly,
it's
so
already
it's very well
established. Yeah.
right. It's very well documented. So it's and at some point, like strings also are very versatile. Then maybe that's why we go to them so much, because it's the head happens. It's like an Agatha Christie kind of show. So this is
Mhm.
the third season. So the first season happens in the Antarctic. The second one happened in the middle of the sea, and this happens in the middle of the desert. So every single time we were kind of like looking for a way to capture the essence of the isolation of being in a remote place. And it's like an Agatha Christie situation. People start, well, you have to watch the show, but people die, and it's like a murder mystery situation. And it always felt to us like the strings represented that really well, because it can be very emotional, it can be very traditional, but it
Mhm.
also be very visceral and very thin. And when you're trying to like materialize or the sound of isolation, then you really start like thinking like, well, how does that sound, and how can I conceive that? And I think maybe part of our work in the head has been to like interpret those concepts and be like, how can we tell the audience that this is where they are, this is what they're feeling,
Mhm.
through the instrumentation of our pieces, or
Mhm.
and that's kind of like what guide us towards crafting one sound or the other.
Mm. Is there a specific sound that you feel showed that isolation more than any other sound?
Yeah, there's like we call it a lizard. It's like
A lizard.
I don't remember the name of the woodwind, but you hear it throughout the show every time. At some point, we were laughing that we might have overused it, but it happens on every like shot that is like an aerial shot, like when you're like finding locations, and
Mhm.
it's there, and it's like, and it just resonates really long. And we came out with that sound just because like Veronica played something, and we merged it with one of the things that we recorded from the piano.
Yeah.
And there's this process called convolution, where you can mix two signals together. You can
Mhm.
sum them, and it's the way that reverb works. And we just took those two sounds, our piano and Veronica's woodwind, and merged it, and that came out, and we really liked it. And it had like a little bit of a shape, like a minor seven, so we liked it. So it's like I mean, it's probably just the harmonic series of the sound, but we really liked it.
Yeah.
And we kept it, and it's fun because, yeah, like finding like sounds that were we call them signature sounds in a way,
Okay.
but having like an identity was very important throughout the three seasons. Like
Mhm.
I think if I was to say the difference between the two other seasons and the third season, where I was a composer, was just that I guess I grew up with the series. Like the first season I was learning from Fede, the second season was more collaborative, and the third season is like, okay, I've learned all this stuff, including this idea of being very thematic,
Mhm.
um, and I just applied it.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's like so fun. So you had this big long time of experimentation. Did you record as you were experimenting and then kind of use that kind of like sampled it, or did you experiment first and then go compose and then record again? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it happens all together. I think nowadays it's very fluid, it's very dynamic. We record something, we try it, and sometimes I like to study. So while I'm studying, maybe like I'll stumble about with something that I like, and I'll just have to make a note. And I carry a bunch of notebooks. Um, you don't need to see them, but they have like markings about things that I found that I like, or sounds.
Well, that's a good idea to have notebooks. So anytime you're just learning something new, you just write it down and then go back and learn about it later.
Yeah, well, I think that was a learning curve too, because I tried different methods and a lot of them failed. So the method that works for me is I have one notebook that is right there. So I have one notebook, and this is my notebook for that. And I have to use this because I found that when I was not being very methodical, then I would forget and I would never follow through. I would like, so I started like, that was on a Schember book that I read actually. He has that theory book, like Fundamentals of Harmony or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And one of his exercises was like, just be methodical or be intentional. And that stood with me. I really liked that. So I applied it to my process because I was tired of forgetting. So I became that. So I have one notebook where I write everything. So yeah, I had to develop the habit of, I found a cool sound, write it down. Where was it? And I've refined my process. Like first, it was just like I love this sound, and it's which one. Like I would read this like months later and be very confused. So I learned to be more descriptive. Like I was playing my ditzy. I have some Chinese flutes, so it's like I was playing my ditzy and I was blowing. I was trying to blow a G, and this came out, and I was blowing it really hard, and I wrote it down. Or I play, or I don't know. The other day I was like on my cello. So it was like, I use this bow. It's broken. Keep it. Make a mark. And those kind of comments make sense to me.
Yeah. And that's really good, especially if you're talking about a series. You may have something from like the first season that you can go back and bring it back into the third season because you have documented everything.
Exactly. Yeah. If anything, the danger is that you start repeating yourself. That's what we found. That it was like, because the first season happened 2020, I think. So by now, the showrunner, Jorge, was also telling me like, it is the show, it is the identity of the show, but it cannot always be the same, no?
Right.
So it was like also challenging to be like, how to take the same sound and reinvent it, or the same musical idea and reinvent it. So this time he was, so yeah, but to your point, yes, document everything. That's a fantastic idea.
Yeah. What are some of the things you did to reinvent it, but still staying true to that signature sound?
Well, the easiest one was the dimension of it, a bigger sound. There's also more resources, so it was easier to go to a bigger studio and be like, just hit this in a big room and see what happens.
Yeah.
So we also have a lot of percussion. There's this very good percussionist in LA that I call for everything. His name is Andrew, and Andrew Magu. It's great. And then Andrew kind of always shows up with like a lot of toys and a lot of things that you would even use on a day-to-day like situation. Like he would bring like things that he could use to like cut the grass, and I'll be like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, just look. And he starts like shaking it, and it makes this really weird sound. It sounds like a synth, and I'm like, how do you even find that? And it's fun because he shows up with all this junk, and he starts like, and with the microphones and everything, I guess it all gets enhanced.
Well, so my question is, if these things sound really cool and kind of sounds like a synth, why not just use a synth? What's the value of doing these like live recordings?
To me, the value is that is mine. And a synth sounds like a synth, and it would always be a synth, and everyone has the same synth. So to me, that's, and I have nothing against synths. I love synthesizers. I love electronics. What I don't like so much is the lack of intentionality that sometimes happens when something is so immediate. So I don't think it's the synth itself. Like we use synths, of course, and in fact, like digital synths are fantastic because you can recall them and you don't have to worry about the patch again. Like it sounds, you don't have to worry like, will this sound the same on the next episode? But I think the idea of on this particular scenario to try to emulate synthesized sounds through organic textures was just aiming to find something that was more unique to the show, that you couldn't find in a library, that you couldn't just, that that you have to do that journey. And again, like this is, I mean, in a way, like this way of making sounds, it's synthesis. It's just not a synthesizer, but it's synthesis. It's the same procedures, like convolution. It's a digital signal processing step, and sampling is too. So it's not that it's, and we're using a lot of the same tools. Like I'm using similar samplers. I'm using similar pedal effects, and So all of that is still there. It's more about like philosophically what we were trying to do with the show. This was not a show about having the sound of a Juno or something. This was about
Mhm.
like we're trying to establish how isolation sounds
Mhm.
and where what does you know what elements take us there and how can we approach them.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of creativity in doing it and finding it. And the exploration can
Yeah,
bring more ideas to the table too. Because you might get inspired by a certain sound, from someone rattling something. You're like, oh, that sounds like this. There's something visceral about that inspiration that comes that way as well.
exactly. And you said a good word, visceral. I think visceral is a very human condition.
Hmm.
So I think the idea was also to like capture that, which is someone blowing is a very human thing. You breathe. So to have someone blowing is on a woodwind was very natural for us. It was like just bring like a bass clarinet. Like I don't know if you remember on the Hateful Eight when you have like Morricone just having like a very low bass clarinet for the theme
Yeah.
and it's so visceral. It could be funny, sure, but it's very visceral. It's like you feel this tension and it's such a simple statement. So we
Right.
were we were kind of like after something similar. Obviously, different shows, different tone, different everything.
Hmm.
And again, synths are fantastic. I love them. I have to use them every day of my life. It's just I also want to find unique sounds to what I do,
Hmm.
and,
So you
and
feel
that just
like composers, musicians should have a basic knowledge of both, right? Synthesizers and maybe extended techniques or traditional composing as well.
yeah, I would say it's beneficial. I understand it's a lot to take in, but I would say I mean they both inform each other. I feel like if you approach a synth from a more musical approach, it tends to give you more control than when
Hmm.
you don't, and you could make the argument that you can rely on randomization and luck and chance, and some of that is true. um, but when you're working on a show and you need to recreate the exact same sound on the next season, it's very helpful to know what musically is happening so you
Yeah.
can recall it and be like, this is the interval that I need.
Yeah.
um, so it's like I think this is an interesting point because I find that very often there's like this distinction of like live music or acoustic music and electronic music, right?
Hmm.
It's almost like they don't exist together. And obviously, I don't think that should be the case. And I think more and more we're seeing like opportunities where they both merit, they both come to the same space. I think like the idea of like presenting these sounds to a showrunner and directors is also the same idea of like they don't always have access to an orchestra or like a live sound.
Mm. Mm.
So the idea of us going through the trouble of, taking several weeks, months to create the same sounds that we could have done with the library is also about like showing them where this came from. Like it's very human.
Yeah.
And it's like this is performed by someone. Sure, it can sound like a library that you push on up, but for us it was more about like the presenting them with the work that exists behind it, like kind of like battling the immediacy of things. Just
Hmm.
being like you just because you think that it's immediate doesn't mean that it is, and it kind of like gives that weight to a musical decision to
Mm.
be like, if I only have a melody, it's like no, but I thought about it really long, and I'm very sure that this is what I want to say. If you don't like it, sure, we can change it.
Hmm.
But kind of like I think that's what the message really is
Yeah.
besides the tone of it. It was more about like the intention behind it and kind of
Yeah.
like the message.
Yeah. Being very intentional. And when you think about all of the work that goes into, a show or a film, everything is very intentional. So music
Exactly, just
is
following
should
on
be too.
that. Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing to have a player play your music. Like I also think it's a very different experience when you
Hmm.
play it. You kind of have your own tempo, your own dynamics, your own
Hmm.
kind of like conceptions of music. And when you have someone come in and almost challenge those conceptions, it's very interesting because then you start thinking, well, you're playing it just a little faster than I would, or you're
Hmm.
playing a little lower than I would, or whatever that person is doing.
Yeah.
But I feel like it nurtures you as a musician too, because then you're thinking like, okay, piano can be softer. I
Hmm.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Or this doesn't have to be as straight, or this can be, it's just interpret a little differently.
Yeah. And it kind of opens your eyes and makes you a better musician too when you hear what other people can do with the same thing.
Yeah, and I think that's I don't know, like to me, maybe that's how I how my first approach to music, like how I first encountered it, was through playing with people and
Mm-hmm.
connecting through that performance, and
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily becoming friends, just enjoying, like having joy, on the
Yeah.
performance. And I think I missed that a lot, and I'm finding it through recording people.
Yeah. That's a good
That's
point because there is so much joy. It's like it's hard to describe to someone who doesn't perform regularly. Joy is just like the perfect word for it. When things are just when you're really connecting with your collaborators and the music's just flowing, it's really hard to describe that feeling to somebody.
it is, because it's like it's also not that deep too. Like you start trying to put words to it, and it's like it's not like we fall in love with each other or anything like that. It's
Yeah.
just a joyful moment. It's
Yeah.
truly beautiful. You enjoy what you guys are producing, and yeah, and you're a piano player. You've probably accompanied a million
Yeah.
musicians, so you
Yeah. Sometimes I have joyful moments and sometimes not as much, but that's okay.
yeah, for sure. So exactly.
Yeah.
I probably have made suffer a lot of pianists with my tempos, but it's yeah, it's a joyful moment. I think that's what music is to me. It's
Yeah.
those moments. And in film is not a musical space. That's the
Yeah.
first lesson that I had to learn. Like, film is about film and
Mm-hmm.
storytelling, and music has its own narrative, its own musicality, its own universe, right? Like,
Yeah.
in fact, the hardest lesson in film is to learn that music is not the main thing,
Mm-hmm.
and you're constantly battling it. You're like, from the basic things, like structure is so important in music.
Yeah.
Not that everything has to have a structure, but just that you decide on a structure, that you have
Mm-hmm.
a direction,
Yeah.
whether it's to have a free form or whatever you want. And in
Yeah.
film, that is challenged in the first minute, because it's like, well, this is how long the scene is,
Yes.
and you're like, okay, and you have to. There's no, can I have one more bar? It's like, no, that doesn't exist. It's
Yeah.
like you have to adapt to what the film says.
Yeah.
um, and it's challenging. And also, you have to adapt to what the film is presenting, right? Like, you're addressing this particular event, and it's like, wow, but that's happening right after this other musical thing, and it's like, I know, but that's the story. That's what matters. So, it's a fantastic challenge. It's not a fun challenge always for every musical situation, but
Mm-hmm.
it's worth experience. And then you start thinking of music as a more of a language to say something that you and the director have agreed on.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and it goes back to inform you that music is just a language. So you
Yeah.
know
And then I love it that you're finding that joy, even though you're not performing anymore, you're finding that in the composing and the recording. I love that. Now we were talking a little bit before, you were saying that the industry's changing. What have you been noticing these last recently?
well, so I should say that I've only been in this industry for like 10, 11 years,
Mm-hmm.
and that matters, because from what I've also learned is like the industry itself was very different just 15 years ago.
Yes. Yeah.
So I guess I'm learning that it changes a lot more often than I thought. But recently, I think the biggest change I've seen demographically is just audiences like find content in other places. Like, a lot of people consume it on their phones, on the go, and in places that I just, like, I would find it in the theater,
Mm-hmm.
like, or just going to the movies. No,
Mm-hmm.
so that has opened up all this kind of content that is also very interesting to explore, but it's just very different. So, for example, games have become basically movies. Like, if you go there's certain games like The Last of Us, who, like, when they made the show, there was not much difference from the game. It's sort of
Right.
like a device, like a storytelling device that was very powerful. And the way that music is approaching a game is so different from film. Basically, because the biggest change is you don't know how long this player is going to be
Mm-hmm.
moving around in one particular spot,
Right.
and you do have to account for that when you're writing for video games, as opposed to film.
Mm-hmm.
um, but also, the second biggest change I've seen is just like the players in the business are changing so fast. So traditionally, when I started working, was that you would aim to get like a studio project, and that was your goal. It's like, you need to get a show by NBC, Disney, the big studios.
Mm-hmm.
That was the goal. It's like, that's how you're gonna be able to make a living. And then Apple, Netflix, Amazon came in, and they changed the picture and I think for the better because they have democratized a lot of the work.
Mm.
So early, before I would see bigger films but less opportunities. Like teams were a lot bigger. You would work for a bigger composer, and the teams were big. It would be like even 10 of us sometimes. So just on the writing team, like combination of music editors, orchestrators, additional writers. And nowadays, Apple is doing I don't know how many series,
Right.
and not just here, but internationally. They would commission productions from Spain, in particular, or other places like in the UK or France or Korea even. So suddenly you have a lot more content to work for, a lot more competition, and along with like better tools. So that means that more people can do what what you're doing now, but for cheaper. So it also changes the way that the studio, I mean, the new entities of film are approaching budgets too. They're like, well, you don't need to record everything, so you can have a smaller budget. And you're like, well, not necessarily true because I'm spending more time on your show because it's longer. So, so, so that's changing right now. I feel like and then LA was particularly hit with the protest and then the fires. And then I feel like LA can't get a break every time it's like something happens.
Yeah, it's true. You've
So
been through a lot.
it has been a lot, and LA is trying to recover. LA is very strong, and somehow LA still is like I've always seen LA as like a pier, is like a place where like people come and go from all paths of life, and I still believe it is. Like I feel like I've met my most meaningful relationships in LA, professional relationships in LA, and I still have, and even if I end up working in different places, like I'm currently working on a play in New York, but I met those people in LA. And same with like Fede and I met in LA, like again the people from the head and I met in LA. Like everything, even though it has happened in different countries, we've all converged in LA at some point. So it has that. Like it still has that it's like moment of like I don't know that geographical importance. Maybe it's because it's so close to Asia and so close to Europe. Well, not close, but it's like right in between. It's like 8 hours from each, so I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, but other hubs are like increasingly like showing up. Like London is a big one right now. It was before, but now it's much bigger. Then there's Spain. Again, I was mentioning for production, it's very big. Like production of film itself. Like there's a lot of like incentives to shoot there, so a lot of productions happening there.
Yeah.
And then Atlanta too. A lot of shooting happens in Atlanta.
There's a lot of shootings happening here. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think the industry is democratizing itself, which I hope is good. I really don't know. I'm seeing like traditional beliefs being shattered. Like for example, before you will be told, once you have an agent, things will be easier. And no one told me that, but that's what I believe.
No.
And then, in fact, most people tell me you get an agent and things are basically the same, but you have someone that calls you on the phone, and that's absolutely true. Like, I have my agent who's amazing. She's lovely and she does a lot of great work. But essentially, I'm still doing the same work and I'm still having, similar meetings, similar. Sure, I get access to a lot more people than I would before when I didn't have an agent. And that's true. And she's very supportive. But I am seeing that the opportunities are just essentially similar, right?
Yeah.
And then, so it gets you thinking like, okay, well, it's not a bad moment to become part of the industry, but I feel like you really need to get get a lot of information and on what you would like to do and where. Like video games is a great niche. It's no longer a niche because it's gigantic.
Yeah,
but
it's huge now,
it's but surprisingly there's not that many people exploring it.
Yeah.
It's like it's almost very corporate when you go to video games. You work for like a for Sony, for Riot, for Blizzard, but and they behave like a corporation. You send a resume, which I thought it was funny. It's like you're sending a resume for music, and they look at it actually, and they're like, "I call you because I look at your resume." You're like, "This is very interesting."
Yeah, it's totally different. Yeah.
Yeah, and some people will enjoy that, and obviously it doesn't happen at every level. But my point being, it's an interesting time in the industry. There's a lot of changes, a lot of fast changes, and then technology wise too, who knows I used to be worried about AI, but after seeing its advances, not so much.
Oh, okay.
I, f- I think not because it couldn't replace us, it 100% can. Like I've seen examples of AI that are terrifyingly good.
Hmm.
Um, but then maybe just questions how will we approach our discipline. No, maybe orchestration will no longer be about choosing the right notes. Maybe it's more about telling an AI entity like this is what I'm aiming for, and you
Mm.
refining it. So
So we have to
it's
adjust not only to the democratization you were saying about the jobs themselves, but like we have to stay up to date with all of the tools that are happening.
yeah, I guess
There we
this is
go.
something that I personally dwell on because it's almost like the message is like there's I guess for the painters it's the same. Like, is there any value on painting by hand, or should you embrace the tools
Mm-hmm.
that you're given? No, um, or like sculptors, like they can sculpt something in 3D or they can do it by hand. Which one is better? Which one
Mm-hmm.
do you want? Same with orchestration. It's like, will you have to orchestrate and do those very nitpicky details that you would do right now, or would you let the machine do it for you? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I guess
Well,
those are
I think, we were talking about this the other day. I think those tools are great, but unless you like know the background of what it is that you're doing, you can't use them as effectively. Like
correct. Yeah.
you kind of have to understand what it is, like the basics and the everything that you were talking about, studying the scores. That way you know why it's working, and then I think you can use them better.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I've been thinking as well too, and that's why I'm less worried about it because I guess I'm seeing its limitations too, as
Mm-hmm.
I'm of being like I guess you still need a human to tell you where to look at. Even if you can do it faster, you still
Yeah.
need someone to point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going on a tangent. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I love talking about this stuff. This is so great, but we do have to end. But Juan, this has been so fun to talk with you about all of the creativity and the joy that you find in music, and the way and the flexibility that you've had. I've just learned so much from you. So I just really appreciate you coming. Do you have any last minute words of advice for musicians before we finish?
No, but thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry if I was rambling a lot, but thank you
No, you
for.
weren't rambling at all. It's so wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to
No,
talk
thank
with
you.
me.
Well, thank you, Christine. Thank you for having me, and thank you for everything.